Hey guys, welcome to Chase Polk Productions. My name is Chase Polk. In this video, I'm going to show you some exercises and strategies to get you started playing with two hands on the piano. There are so many different techniques to play with two hands on the piano. I'm going to try to cover as many as I can in this video, from beginner to advanced. I'm going to start with the right hand, and if you're a beginner, you're going to be able to start the left hand section before you master the right hand. But at the same time, if you're right-handed, doing the left hand at all might be a lot harder, so you might just work on the right hand until you master that and then work on the left hand. However you want to do it, I've put timestamps down in the description so you can jump around, all right? If you haven't seen my first video, make sure you check it out right here. In that video, exercise number 8, I cover a 1-4-1-5-7 progression. Make sure that you've worked on that exercise well enough that you can play it in time with both hands before you start this video. And make sure you can play this with a metronome. So in this video, I'm going to start with right hand exercises first. My left hand is going to do that chord progression from exercise number 8. So you want to make sure you can do this chord progression well enough so that you don't have to think about it so much when you're doing these exercises. Now, for this video, I'm going to make one alteration to the 5-7 chord. I'm just going to get rid of the 7. Okay? So it's a little bit more poppy, a little more contemporary. But if that's going to trip you up to switch, instead of doing this chord, you can go ahead and do this chord for all these exercises. I'm just showing you that this might be more fun. This might work better for certain melodies. So I would encourage you to be able to play both. And then you can decide what sounds better to you. Maybe something bluesy might sound better if you do this chord instead of this chord. But for this video, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to do this one. Okay? So the first thing that you want to do is we want to just get our hands playing here. So we're going to start with the simplest exercise we can, and we're going to gradually get more complicated. So the first thing we can do is we can just play chord tones. Okay? So what is a chord tone? That means it's a note from the chord. So let's just pick the 1 or the tonic here. Okay? Start by just making sure you can play this. When we go to the F chord, let's go to the tonic of F. Okay, and let's go back to C for the C chord, and let's go to G for the G chord. And then like this. So the whole exercise would be the next thing I want you to do is I want you to change the rhythm. So right now we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Starting with whole notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. As a continuation from my last video, you can get the metronome out and make sure that you're playing that in time, okay? The next thing I want you to do is just do half notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then we're just going to go up to quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And you can do all these with the metronome. Make sure you can do these nice and clear. Then the next thing you can do is threes. You go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. You could do it in 3/4. Then we can do 6/8 if we wanted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we could do something like that. And then finally you can do the 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So just to make sure this all makes sense here, we want to go 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 that at any tempo. Maybe 80 is a good starting point for a beginner. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. But you can do whatever tempo suits you. Okay, so that's the most basic way to get you started playing with two hands. Doesn't get simpler than that. The next thing you can do is you can do two chord tones. So for a C, we could do the C and the E. And then for the F, we could do the F and the A. We go to the E and the G for back to the C, and you can pick whatever you like. So if we do 80 on the metronome, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And you can pick any notes that are from the chord. That's why they're called chord tones, okay? It's always going to sound good if you play a chord tone with a chord. It's never going to sound bad. Very safe. Okay, then you could take it a step further and you can go 3. You can do any of the chord tones. You don't just have to do 2, you can do all 3. So I could do that's kind of level 1. You're starting with single notes, you're moving to 2 chord tones, then you're moving to 3 chord tones. The next thing we can do is we can take the C major scale that we learned from the previous video. Again, if you don't know the C major scale, go back to my first video and learn the C major scale. Make sure you can play it with a metronome before you try to do it with your left hands playing the chords. Okay, we're just going to play the regular scale. So we can do it in time. We'll do it with quarter notes. 1, 2, 3. So all I want you to do, we're just adding one extra note to make it work. But it's basically like you're doing the C major scale. So yeah, you could practice that one hand if that's difficult, and then bring 2 hands together. Again, with the metronome eventually when you feel comfortable. Okay, so yeah, so you could play that with the metronome. Then the next thing you can do is, once you get the hang of this, you can add different rhythms. You don't have to just do straight rhythms. You could do a quarter note and then an eighth note and a dotted quarter note, whatever you want to do. So that might sound something like this. You can play around with it. Be creative with it. You can play whatever notes you want from the scale. Eventually we'll figure out how we can make it sound better, but this is how you're going to get started. So it might sound a little weird at some point. But if you want to make it sound better, one of the things you can do is land on a chord tone. So if I play whatever notes I want, but when I change the chord on that chord change, make sure you play a chord tone at that point. So if I'm... I can do that too. That gets into the extensions. This is a 9, but for now, that's just a tip you can add. It'll sound good. It'll sound more like you know what you're doing instead of just playing random stuff. But this is all good to do together, so I'd like you to do all these things in this order. Okay, so the next kind of idea or approach you can take when you're playing with 2 hands on the piano is you can use notes from the pentatonic scale. So the pentatonic scale is basically just the C major scale without 2 of the notes. So the C major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. has 7 different notes. The 8th note's just the first note again. So we're just gonna take out the 4 and the 7. That leaves, okay, and you can play it just like this. You can start just simple. Something like that. And then you can add a little extra rhythm to it. And by the way, if you want, here's just a quick little thing. If you want to play the pentatonic scale more than an octave, you just repeat this. So it's just this. And then. If you want. So once you start playing around with that, that can be built on by doing the blues scale. So the blues scale is just adding 2 notes to that, 2 black notes to the pentatonic scale, okay? We're just gonna add the flat 3 or the minor 3rd. And then we're gonna add a flat 6. Okay? And then you can play around with those notes. So the way that this works is the flat 3 is going to be better to land on as an actual note, whereas this one, the flat 6, is going to sound better in passing. So what I mean is, I kind of can hang on that one a little more. So it could sound something like this. Something like that, okay? I'm doing a little slide there. Okay? Something like that. I'm using the flat 3 and the flat 6 in a couple spots. So play around with that. You can play it however you want. But if you want to get started, you could just try to learn exactly what I did here. Something like that. Then finally, you can just use any note you want from the chromatic scale, right? Okay, some of the notes are going to sound better than the other ones. But as we learned with the blues notes, they sound good before the white notes. They make that tension. But you wouldn't want to play a lot of the black notes. That's not what you're going to want to do. But if you play it, for example, you could play something like this. Okay, that's pretty intense and pretty fast. That's a way that you're going to make it sound musical, right? But you wouldn't want to go... I mean, you can, but you probably wouldn't want to do that, okay? So one of the fastest ways to incorporate the black notes and play this chromatic scale over these chords is just to do slides. So you just slide into a note that you want to play from a black note below it. Okay, that's a slide just like we did in the blues. Okay, it works really good. But I can do it here too, even though that's not in the blues scale. Okay, because I'm sliding into a chord tone. It just sounds good. If you do a little run and just end on a chord tone, it'll sound good. So you see, you can play something like that. You can do slides. So as long as you play the black note and resolve it to a white note in this key, it'll sound good. It'll sound a little jazzy and weird, but maybe that's what you want. The other way we can do this is we can do some rolls. We can roll into a chord tone. So you could play an exercise like this. So slowly. Fast again. So to give you an example of how a roll can sound really cool, in one of my jazz songs, my ending goes like this. All right? And then finally, if you just play chromatic notes really quickly, it can sound good. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's the final place you could take it. Okay, and that's a really advanced exercise, but if you want to learn it, I'll show you real quick what I'm doing. I'm going, right? So I'm just completely going chromatically up and back down. I'm going from here, going up to a chord tone and then back. So I'm going. So here it's, that's on the C chord. Here I'm kind of outlining some chord tones. And now I'm going to go back to the chromatic. Then I'm going to play an oddie note on the C chord. And then I'm going to come down. Okay? That's very advanced. I don't expect you to be able to play that. You're gonna work up with this video, starting from the beginning and getting to this point, okay? So that should be hard if you're a beginner. I'm just giving you some something to shoot for. The other ways to do it is just kind of to play the chords. You're playing the chord, but you're doing it kind of a rhythmic way. So here's a song called Imagine by John Lennon. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't, but whether you like it or not, it's got a really cool kind of thing there. So all you do to play this technique is you just play the top two notes of the chord, and then you play the bottom note. And you just... So just do 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, all these, you can get a metronome out and work on them that way, okay? And to show you just where the Imagine technique can kind of get you, you don't have to do it just these voicings, you can change the voicings eventually. Play around with it. It's a really cool technique. Then finally, you can do an Alberti Bass, but you can do it with the right hand. This is going to be, again, difficult to do, but I'll show it to you because you'll get here eventually. The way you do that is you do the outside notes and then the inside, and then you go back to the top note. Okay, so you usually do this with the bass, but eventually I'll show you later in the video why you should learn it with the right hand too, because it sounds cool. All right, so 2, 3, 4, 1. So, and we'll do, eventually at this point, we're gonna do 8th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... right, great job. So just to summarize that, I want you to start from the beginning. Make sure you can do every exercise with two hands with a metronome. Once you get it with the metronome, again, like I talked about in my last video, there's a 5-step process. It's notes and fingers, then it's rhythm. You do that with a metronome. It helps you hone the rhythm. And then you use the metronome to increase the tempo and see how fast you can do it. But you don't want to go too fast, too soon. All right, so now let's go to the left hand. There's a bunch of different ways to play the piano, okay? We can do chords in both hands. Maybe you might do this if you're singing, okay, and you have a bass player. Or you can do chords in your left hand and melody in your right hand. Or you can do chords in your right hand and melody in your left hand, which is a bass line. We call that a bass line, okay? So that's what we're gonna be doing here. We're gonna be doing bass lines, basically. Bass techniques or left hand techniques. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna do, this is going to be pretty applicable if you're trying to sing and play the piano, because oftentimes when you're singing, the melody of your voice is actually what's most important, not the melody in the right hand. So this is going to be more applicable to you, but sometimes it's nice to throw little flourishes in there, even when you're singing, right? Elton John, for instance. So first, most simple way we can do it, a simple exercise to get you going, is we're going to do single notes on the one of the chord, okay? So basically like the first exercise in the right hand. So you can do this at whole notes to start. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then you can do half notes just like we did in the first exercise on the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then you can take it to quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. And eighth notes and whatever you want to do to challenge yourself. The next thing you can do here to make it really fill out is to just do octaves. Now, if your hands are big enough, some people's hands aren't big enough, but if your hands are big enough, just do like this. You can do that same tempo for just like we did. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to show you this. It's a nice sound. I mean, it can do the low ones too. Okay, that's a nice sound. Then the next way you can play it is you can do 2 chord tones in the left hand. So that would be something like this. Okay, now I played the F because that's the 7th of the chord, so you can do that if you want. But let's just simplify it even more. So let's just go. Okay. You can do any ones you want. Then eventually you can do 3 chord tones. Arpeggiating the chord, but anyway, you get the idea. You can play any of those notes, so that's an approach you can take. Then we've got fifths, okay? So a fifth is just playing a 1 and then the 5th of the chord. And this is a nice sound. Now you can add the octave to that, and this is how I played a lot when I was first learning. I did a lot of this stuff. You can even arpeggiate it, but just if you want it to sound real beefy, this is like a power chord on a guitar for you people watching that play guitar. That's what a power chord is. That's what sounds beefy. And then you can arpeggiate it. Okay, that's a really nice sound. Just a really quick little trick. If you add in the 9th, which is just the 1 note after the octave. that's a really fun thing that you can play around with, all right? Then we can move on to the blues now in the left hand. That's gonna be like a walking bass line. So an example of a blues walking bass line I can show you is this right here. Okay. Or I could do so basically, whatever you do, you want to end up on a chord tone. The one is going to be the best most of the time. And now I could go back to the G. I could go, or I could do. They both sound good, right? So whatever you want to do, finally one more time. Okay, so just an example. Just so you see where you can take it. Okay, and then finally, what you can do is you can do the Imagine version on the left hand is kind of like a waltz. But you could do, but you don't hear that as often, but you do hear a lot of. So just practice that, and we're gonna do 3/4, so we're counting to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And actually, the first time I would practice that. Again, always do these with the metronome. That's where you want to get to. And then finally, we can do the Alberti Bass. In the left hand is actually where you would normally do it. So it's bottom, top, middle, top. And it's kind of almost like a tongue twister for your mind, if that makes sense. It's hard at first. But I remember the first song my teacher had me learn that made me master this was London Bridges. Let's see. See if I can really, and I would try to see how fast I could do it. Still got it. Okay, so once you've done all these things, one of my favorite things to do, and when I play it, people think, oh, it sounds really good, it sounds really fun, is you do the Alberti Bass together at the same time. So it would start like this. So you can do it like that, but what I really love is to do the mirror image on your right hand, and I've talked about mirror image exercises in my last video, but some of you might find this easier. But I really love this sound, and you can take this in a lot of different chords, and it's a really good sound. Eventually, you can take all of these exercises to other chords, but I want you to practice all with the same chord progression just to simplify it with your mind. The other thing you can do is you can play both of the techniques at the same time. You don't have to play a chord in one hand or a chord in the other hand when you're doing the exercises. For example, if I'm going to do a bass line, I don't have to play chords, I can you get the idea. So you can take any of those exercises. If I wanted to do you can play around with combining any of those exercises, all right? If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. I love to help you guys with your questions. And I'm offering music lessons online. So if you'd like to schedule a lesson, just contact me and I'd love to work with you. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for future videos. See you next time.